Hello everyone, I'm Kevin, otherwise known as Form BX257, here to bring you another 1980s G.I. Joe tour review. And today I'll be taking a look at the Iron Grenadier's Mercenary, the 1989 Darklon, and his Evader motorcycle. Now, Darklon makes his first comic book appearance in the Old Mobile comic run of G.I. Joe in issue number 88. However, the Evader motorcycle does not make any appearances, not that I know of, at least not in the Old Marvel comic run anyway. And neither Darklon nor the Evader make any cartoon appearances. Normally I let you, the viewer, read the file card at your leisure at the end of the video, but there are some things I'd like to point out about Darklon's. It's pretty minimal, and things like him being the leader of his own Eastern European country named after himself, Darklonia, are not mentioned here. His relationship to Destro is, however, as is his cast iron castle. The Destro connection gives him wearing a metal mask some tradition without mentioning it, and the bizarre castle in the Alps, which I tried to look up and see if there was a real-world example, but there wasn't, means that he's far enough away from Destro's Scottish stomping ground so as not to cross paths. This is also yet another Iron Grenadier's file card to mention Destro taking over Cobra. While the name Darklon may seem a bit cheesy, it actually makes a bit of sense because he is supposed to be related to Destro, hence the names starting with D. However, I'm still surprised that they actually chose this as the final name because it is the same as a comic book character. However, the Mystic had not been published in many years at that point, so I suppose it was open and available. Let's start off with the figure, Darklon, and leave his Evader motorcycle for a bit later. After all, he was marketed as a deluxe figure. It says on the box, Darklon and his Evader, and not the other way around. And let's start off by showing up his only accessory. I highly doubt that Darklon's weapon is based on a real-world firearm, but it does have some curious features, such as this wire going from the action and down into this canister at the bottom, which looks a lot like the gas canister that you would find powering an air rifle or even a paintball gun, which kind of makes sense because of how the one and only time you see this ever used is in the comic books. In issue 90, you can see Darklon using it as a tranquilizer gun, meaning that that large front end portion might actually be a removable addition to the rifle just to house the tranquilizer darts. I know this is going to be hard for some to believe, but Darklon here actually has a very small but very loyal fan base, which is very odd when you consider that in issue 146 of the Old Marvel comic run, Darklon is actually killed by an explosion. Now, admittedly, there aren't too many details on that, and it's sort of done very quickly. However, thanks to that loyal fan base, today, Darklon is back, having somehow survived the explosion, and in the IDW comic books he is portrayed as kind of a badass. So what exactly are fans of Darklon actually attracted to? Well, it's probably just the mystery of the figure rather than the figure itself, but he has a lot of very interesting details nonetheless. Like the entire green portion of him has this very odd texture to it. I'm guessing this is some type of chainmail. But I guess the chainmail, and actually the little bits of armor which are all over his body, actually goes along with a sort of a medieval theme that not only does his Eastern European background convey, but also because he is a cousin to Destro. So he also has that sort of medieval linking as well. He also has little bits of armor, like I said, in very odd places, kind of like Tomax and Zaymot, who had armor in strange places, like on his arm, over his right breast, which is very odd. Kind of reminds me of the type of sling that I had to wear when I dislocated my shoulder. But I'm thinking that this is sort of to mitigate recoil from a rifle butt. He also has it on his crotch, which is always a good idea. And of course, a bit on his leg there. But down here, you can also see his trademark group of little gold grenades. At least I'm guessing these are grenades. Unfortunately, they are painted rather thickly, so a little bit of the detail is kind of gone. So they kind of look like grapes, but I'm pretty sure they're grenades. He also has these little things here, which I'm assuming are bullets, like extra rifle bullets in a clip form. He also has them on the back of his leg, which I'm not really sure how he would reach that, but, well, okay, they're there. One of the unfortunate things about Darklon is that he is very oddly colored with the black and the green, but also with the red pants and orange boots. I mean, granted, with the green here, it at least is kind of mirrored down here, so it gives him a bit of asymmetry. But I do kind of wish they went with some other color other than this red and orange for the rest of him. He seems to be wearing some type of gas mask, or at least that's what most people's interpretation of that mask is. However, you do have to bear in mind that he is a cousin to Destro, meaning that he has a tradition of wearing a mask. While the sculpting on the actual action figure seems a bit flat, to me it really reminds me of a modern interpretation of a plague doctor's mask, which is really very spooky and very interesting at the same time. And now combine that with his oddly colored eyes peeking through the mask, and the fact that his camouflage looks more like falling raven feathers than anything else. And I could kind of see where the fascination with this character kind of comes from. As a matter of fact, if you want a better colored Darklon, there actually is one. In the late 1990s, Olmec Toys actually bought the rights to some of the Hasbro molds, which Hasbro obviously wasn't using in the late 90s. One of the molds that they bought was the Darklon mold. And interestingly enough, they actually molded it in black and gold, the very colors which match the Iron Grenadier's general color scheme very well. Unfortunately, it's a really hard figure to find, but it is out there if you want a really cool alternative. And here is Darklon with his fellow Iron Grenadiers, but from the previous year of 1988. And you can see that in 1988 we start off with a very strong black, gold, and red color scheme. And unfortunately, well, Darklon just doesn't carry that through. And here is Darklon with his fellow Iron Grenadiers from the same year of release, 1989. And you can see that they actually have kind of gotten rid of that black, gold, and red color scheme which they all previously had, and replaced it with big swatches of bright colors. I will say though that Darklon actually looks really good compared to the other subgroup of 1989, Cobra's Python Patrol. Look at that! They have all the same green, a little hint of red, and black on them. Darklon's Evader motorcycle is actually a fairly large motorcycle, and in fact a fairly large vehicle considering the mini vehicle class that it's supposed to be in when included with a deluxe figure. Like, it's larger than like the 1987 Zanzibar's Air Skiff. It's even larger than the 1990 Overlord's Dictator, which was a much more complicated vehicle than this, but this actually has a lot more real estate size-wise. Especially since it is supposed to be a motorcycle and has the excuse of being smaller, but really it isn't. As you can see, this is what it looks like with the figure beside it. It's really long and kind of low slung, and does have some fairly interesting features. The first of which is right on the front here. Now these gun-like front cannons are on a little post here, mushroom post to be exact, and have handles at the back here. And they can kind of swivel all the way around like this, but not outwards. Now this is very interesting because the box actually says that these are removable, meaning that while it is often depicted the driver on the inside holding these on the outside like they're bike handles, the fact of the matter is that that's not how they're supposed to be used. They're actually supposed to be just sort of like automatic guns, I suppose, and removed when you want the figure to have armament, which is actually fairly difficult to do because they are, like I said, on those mushroom pegs and are very well stuck in there. You have to really give it a good yank in order to pop it out, and quite frankly, I don't really recommend doing that quite often. And here's Darklon holding the front cannon the way he's meant to, at least according to the box front. And I have to admit, it does look quite a bit better than this thing. On the top we have two removable missiles on a swiveling base. In order to get a figure into the driving seat, a figure would sit recumbent style like this rather than like a proper motorcycle like that. But there is actually enough room in this cutout in order just to slide a figure in there. But you're supposed to open up the whole front shell like this. Now, as you can see, it has a peg here and a hole there, which is what secures this down so it doesn't just fly open by accident. And if you notice that not just the canopy, but the entire top frame actually kind of raises up here, including the engine cover. So that kind of slides up like that. And you can see the engine detail at the back, as well as the cockpit detail. This is a vehicle which came with a seat belt here, which just the end just plugs right into that hole there. And like I said, the figure just sits in there recumbent style, so he just sits in there like that. Properly seated with the seat belt attached, closing this thing up, and you can see that with his arm out, he really can't reach those front cannons, which again kind of makes me think that these were never meant to be handheld while on the vehicle and are not some type of substitute for vehicle controls. Underneath the Evader, there is no detail. However, you will notice the wheels are actually rather wide, meaning that this thing can actually stand upright without the need for a kickstand. You'll also notice that the front and back wheels are exactly the same mold, meaning that if you're missing one on your Evader, you don't have to look for a specific back or front wheel. They're just both the same thing. However, even if they were like skinny regular motorcycle wheels, I'm pretty sure this thing would still stand upright because of these little flaps on the bottom. I'm pretty sure that that's exactly what these things are. They're supposed to be little helpers in case this thing kind of rocked over like that. And this is a type of thing that Hasbro designers actually put into quite a few of their vehicles. Like the 1984 Shark had these little square-like protrusions down because, well, it was like a flying submarine. It had no landing gear. So it had these little square little things on the bottom. And the 1987 Mamba helicopter actually had that. There was just like these big square things. I'm actually kind of glad they went with a rounded design. Like, I understand that it's it helps it not catch on the ground because it's rounded. But honestly, it actually flows quite a bit better with the vehicle than those stubs on the Shark or the Mamba did. While my feelings towards the Darklon action figure are kind of lukewarm, I certainly don't hate it, but I really do love the Evader motorcycle, and I feel it's kind of unfortunate that it's supposed to be a one-off for an individual rather than a troop building vehicle with a generic pilot. I think I would have liked that, because this thing makes a perfect recon and scout vehicle to complement the larger vehicles in the Iron Grenadier lines. I really love its swoopy, sort of Art Deco, retro-futuristic look. I think that suits the Iron Grenadiers just fine, and especially the color scheme of just simple black and gold. A very Iron Grenadiers color scheme when you think of them. One thing, however, is that this thing may not actually have started off as an Iron Grenadier vehicle. In fact, that it looks quite a bit like a sketch for a 1987 cancelled Cobra Law vehicle. This sort of clamshell design actually being more bug-like. And in fact, when you see the rear framework, that looks a lot like the outer edges of a Cobra hood. And here's the Evader with the first year of Iron Grenadier's vehicles, and you can see just how well it blends in. The fact of the matter is that the torpedo-like shape of the Evader actually kind of mirrors the torpedo shape of the front end of the AGP. The black and gold, of course, goes along with everything. However, you will notice that despite the fact that this is supposed to be a mini vehicle for a deluxe figure, just like Destro and his Dominator, the fact of the matter is that this really emphasizes just how small Destro's Dominator is. It looks like he barely fits in his vehicle, whereas this thing looks like a substantial size, and they're supposed to be in the same price range, just separated by 1 year. And here is the Evader with the 1989 Iron Grenadiers Razorback. Now this is why I keep harping on the style and color of the Evader being kind of superior and really going very well with the previous year, because this is the only Iron Grenadiers vehicle we get for 1989. So these two are supposed to be in the same series, they just don't look it because of the style and the color of the Razorback. Now I'm not saying that the Razorback's a bad toy, it has a lot of really good features, and quite frankly if this were a Cobra vehicle I'd have absolutely no problem with it, and I think most collectors would. But because it's supposed to be part of the Iron Grenadiers line and it doesn't even match the one other vehicle released in that year, it just seems really strange. But then again, if this thing had the Razorback colors, like let's say instead of the gold body it had that pumpkin orange and maybe bronze missiles on top, would I like it as much? Actually, I don't think so. I think the colors really do complement the shape in this instance. So just what is the opposite number for the Evader motorcycle on the G.I. Joe side? Well, if you saw my general video on Iron Grenadiers, you notice that I pegged them as the opposite number of specifically the Battle Force 2000 subline. So a 1987 Marauder motorcycle makes a bit more sense here. And you'll notice that without the back trailer that the motorcycle is supposed to come with, these are actually the same size. The following year we also get these little motorized G.I. Joe vehicles, but let's face it, I don't think the ATV really counts as an opposite number here. However, in the same year of this release, there was a line of battlefield robots, which are actually manned vehicles and not robots at all. So I think the Tri-Blaster actually makes a great opposite number, at least for a G.I. Joe vehicle from the same year. If you're looking for a Darklon action figure or an Evader motorcycle, or both on the aftermarket, they're actually fairly common and very easy to find, complete with all of their parts. As a matter of fact, they're actually a fairly sturdy toy, especially odd because the Evader is made out of that gold plastic, but I guess it doesn't really have any stress points on the gold plastic parts. And it's actually rather odd that the Darklon is as common as he is, because normally driver figures aren't really that common unless they have a mail-away re-release. However, Darklon never got that, but you can still find tons of him on the aftermarket, still sealed on his red back bubble for some strange reason. About the only thing that I would say to look out for is of course the seatbelt, which is kind of hard to see in there, and it is often missing, but the fact of the matter is that this is the same generic seatbelt which you get with a lot of 1988, 89, and some 1990 vehicles, so that's not a part that you really have to worry about. Of course, even though I really like the Evader, I understand that its popularity is linked to a figure which is not too popular, and that's why its value is so low on the aftermarket despite its age. And yes, notoriously, on the panel below this one, you can see that from behind it looks like Darklon is bald. However, Darklon's very odd color scheme looking very, very strange in contrast. Well, that's all the time I have right now. Please check out my Facebook page for more information and behind the scenes photos for these reviews. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for next time to see another 1980s G.I. Joe toy review. See you then.